If you've ever sat through a couples therapy session and left feeling worse than when you walked in, you're in the right place. Most men who tell me they feel like they don't want to go back to couples therapy aren't saying that because they've given up on their marriage. They're saying it because they've already tried it. It's something that they went in willing to do, and they did their best. But they left feeling like the problem instead of part of the solution. Now, today, I'm going to explain exactly why that happens, what's actually going on in those sessions, and what needs to be in place before therapy can actually work. By the end of this, you're going to understand three things. First, why therapy so often feels like 2 against 1, and why that perception is not just in your head. Second, why pushing through anyway usually makes things worse, not better. And third, what actually needs to be in place before couples therapy can do what it's supposed to do. Here's what the experience usually looks like. You went in willing. You tried to explain your perspective. But then you were told that your perspective was defensive. So switched tactics, tried to listen. Then you were told you weren't really listening. Again, amid all of this, you tried to stay calm. But then you were told that staying calm meant that you weren't emotionally present. By the end of the session, you had no idea how to win, and you left feeling more alone than when you walked in. Now, one of the most common things that I hear from men who've had this experience is that it felt like you were getting beat up on the whole time, that it seemed to be a spot just for her to air her complaints, but that there was no room for you to say how you feel. Now, if that resonates, stay with me, because what's happening in those moments is not what it looks like. This is not a willingness problem. That's the first thing that I want to name. If therapy felt like being ganged up on, it doesn't mean that you're unwilling to change or incapable of connection. What it actually means is that you were placed in an environment designed to generate emotional vulnerability without those internal tools to help you stay grounded while you were in it. Here's what's actually happening in those sessions. Your partner has been processing her feelings for weeks or sometimes even months before you walk in. She winds up arriving with a language, clarity, and emotional access. The therapist has been trained to work in that emotional space and is able to follow her easily. You, on the other hand, arrive with effort and a ton of goodwill, but you don't have the same emotional fluency. You don't have that same internal access, but you're expected to respond in real time to emotions that you've not even had the space to fully understand yourself. That's what feels like being outnumbered. What it actually is being emotionally outpaced. And when your nervous system cannot keep up with the pace of the room, it does what it was built to do. It shifts into protection. Your defensiveness, it rises, and that shutdown begins. Or sometimes even an edge will enter your voice that you didn't intend. From the outside, that looks like resistance. But from the inside, it's protection. And I want you to know that those are not the same thing. A lot of men keep going to therapy because they don't want to be the one who quits. They're someone who genuinely wants to save their marriage and wants to try to make their wives happy, to make their lives happy. So they push through these sessions that feel incredibly demoralizing to them. They wind up agreeing to do things that they're not sure are actually right for them. They use emotional language that doesn't feel natural or that they don't quite understand. And they try to show up in the way that they believe they're supposed to, while internally, they wind up feeling cornered and often exposed. That's the same overfunctioning pattern that often exists at home. That effort without the capacity. And that effort without capacity to be present, it doesn't create connection. It creates something akin to performance. And that performance cannot produce emotional safety for anyone. Over time, the cost of that builds and resentment grows. Engagement winds up dropping and hope winds up fading. Therapy just winds up becoming another place where you feel like you can't get it right. So pushing through is not the solution, but building the capacity to stay present is. Couples therapy is a legitimate and often powerful tool. I want you to hear me say that loud and clear. But it's legitimate and powerful when the right foundation is in place. It can be one of the most effective environments for repair and connection. But it does require a set of internal skills that most men were never given before walking into that room. That ability to stay regulated when criticism or when intense emotion begins to enter the conversation. That capacity to recognize what's happening inside of you before that shutdown or reactivity takes over. The language to actually describe your experience instead of just defending your position. And that ability to slow a conversation down without withdrawing from it entirely. Without those skills in place, therapy asks you to run before you can walk. The content of the sessions may be valuable, but if your nervous system is in survival mode, you can't access that content. You're too busy managing the experience of being there. Now, most men were taught to stay composed, to solve problems, and to push through discomfort, not to recognize when their nervous system was shutting down or becoming reactive, not to know how to bring themselves back once it did. And those are learnable skills. Building them first changes everything that comes after, including what's possible in a therapy room. If this is something that resonates with you, the best starting point is understanding your own patterns before deciding whether therapy is the right next step or what kind of support would actually help you move forward. The Disconnection Audit is something that I created that's a free private assessment and takes about 5 minutes. It helps you understand how your nervous system and relational patterns interact without diagnosis, blame, or a pressure to perform. If past therapy is something that left you feeling like you were the problem, I want you to know that you were not. You were asked to navigate emotional territory without the tools to stay grounded inside of it. And that foundation is something that can be built. Once it is, everything starts to change. So I'm going to invite you to find the link to the Disconnection Audit in the description below. If what I talked about here was something that you've been sitting with, the earlier recordings in this series are worth listening to. The first one covers why smart, successful men often feel disconnected at home. The second covers why trying harder is actually making things worse. And the third covers the roommate dynamic and why attraction fades even when love is still there. So make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And I'll talk to you in the next one.